And welcome back to part 2 of the Buckthorn backpack and tote sew along. Today we're going to be working on a few things for the exterior. We're going to be assembling the front of the bag, the back. If you're doing the backpack, I'll go through both the tote and the backpack assembly, and then we're going to be attaching the base, and that's kind of it for assembling the outer shell. So I think that's about it, and we'll just get started. Okay, so starting with the front pocket, for the front of the backpacker tote, we've got, this is my backpack version and this is for the tote version. So what you're just gonna do is match the short sides, right sides together there. And then we're just gonna sew right along that short edge. All right, so that seam is sewn, and what we're just gonna do is turn it right side out. You could first press this seam open, either with just your fingers or using your iron, just to get that to lay nice and flat. Just gonna turn that right side out, and then that seam becomes the bottom of your pocket, and this folded edge becomes the top. I'm just gonna give that a good press. And now we're going to take both of the front pockets over to the sewing machine. We're just going to do a couple rows of top stitching on each. Okay, so I've grabbed one main exterior panel, and we're going to attach the front pocket. So the first thing we're going to want to do is mark the center, and make sure you have the long edge. This is indicated in the pattern for each of the main panels. So you don't want to have it turned this way. I know that the sizes are similar, but make sure you have the long edge. Here's an example. This is the long edge of the tote. Okay, so I'm just going to mark that in half to find that center. So there's my center marking, and we're going to place it for the backpack. It's 5 inches down from the top edge. You can also find the center of this pocket just to make sure. Just pinch that in half. Okay, so that's where my pocket goes. Okay, and then we're going to baste in place along both of these side edges. Oops, and then top stitch in place right along this bottom fold. So that's the bottom of your pocket. I'm just going to repeat that same process with the tote pieces. Okay, so now we have the front pocket attached to the main panel, and I'm going to grab my front handle if I'm working with the backpack here. So this is the front handle piece that we prepared earlier, and this is kind of the general idea of how it's going to go on. We're going to be covering those raw edges of the front pocket, and I went ahead and made center markings on the top and bottom. And that's going to give me the placement I need for how far the webbing is going to be away from that edge. So for the backpack, it's 2.5 inches. So I like to just use my graded ruler and line it up like that, just to make sure that my piece is going to be as straight as it can be. And then just pin that in place. And I'll repeat that for the other edge. And then I'm just going to make this top marking as to where I'm going to pivot when I'm stitching. That's 1.5 inches down from the top edge. I just like to mark with a pin. You could use your chalk or other marking tool. Okay, so now that those are marked out, I'm going to take it over and I'm going to top stitch starting on this bottom edge of the webbing, go all the way up, pivot here at this marking, and travel back down. I do like to put a little extra reinforcement at this top edge, so I have this, I eyeball it, I do a little triangle that is just on this top edge, or you could just make a straight line back and forth just to reinforce that. But do that for both sides of the webbing. Okay, so I'm going to try and get a close-up of doing the triangle, and you can mark it with the marking tool ahead of time. I would recommend that if you're not super comfortable with having done it before. So I'm just going to show you how I do it. So there's my line that I'm going to go across. I'm going to just pivot here, and I guess it's about, I think it's maybe a 60-degree angle, but I'm going to go about to the halfway point of the webbing. That's kind of where I'm headed. Stop with my needle down and pivot, and I'm going to match up right where my previous top stitching was. I know it's not super easy to see, but that's the corner where I'm going to meet back up to travel back across. And so now I've just reinforced that top edge because that was the second pass over that. And there's the triangle, if you can see that. Okay, so I've got the back panel here for the backpack, and we're just going to grab the strap holders and the 2 triangle rings. First, I'm going to thread the webbing through the rings here, and I'm just going to fold it back on itself by about 1 inch. Okay, so then I'm going to make sure if you haven't already, mark the center on the top and bottom, and we're going to find the bottom marking, and we're just going to make that inner edge of this strap holder webbing 2.5 inches from that center marking. So I'm going to line that to that and place this one also 2.5 inches away, and then we're just going to pin that in place. Okay, so then I'm going to take it over to the sewing machine, and I'm going to travel up the edge of the webbing, go across, and I can also do a bit of reinforcement stitching here by going back and forth and then back down this edge. So up, across, and down. Okay, so now that those strap holders and triangle rings are attached, I'm just going to set that aside, and we're going to grab our 2 strap pieces. Those are the 2 that are the same size. And we're going to grab our strap sliders and our swivel clasp. And we're going to make the straps here. So we'll do it one at a time. And I'm just going to grab my hardware. I'm going to thread the webbing end up and over that center bar. And then I'm going to bend this back on itself. You could do a zigzag stitch to finish this raw edge off of the webbing, or you can just tuck it under. And then I'm going to sew that in place. Okay, so I've sewn that webbing back on itself, and you can do just a straight line and go back and forth a few times, or make a small little rectangle for reinforcement. So I've done that for both of the straps, and I'm going to just do it one at a time. I'll make sure this folded edge is facing up, and I'm going to thread the swivel clasp through the raw end, and then I'm going to thread it up again and over that center bar, and that's what makes it adjustable. So there's my swivel clasp on the end, my slider, and then we're going to have that raw end that we'll finish later. So that is one strap, and we'll just repeat that same thing. So I like to hold this folded end up just to make sure that I don't have it in the wrong positioning. I'm just going to thread my strap slider on, and then thread the raw end up and over the center bar. So there is my second strap. All right, so the straps are done. I'm just going to set those aside, and then I've got the strap reinforcement strip that goes on this back main panel, and we're just going to prepare that piece by folding these short ends back on themselves by 1/2 inch. And then we're going to fold it, both the long raw edges to the center. So I'm going to take that over to the ironing board and show you how that looks. Okay, so that's how the back side will look. Those long raw edges are meeting, and this is how my front side will look. Okay, now my strap reinforcement strip is all pressed, and that is going to be placed 1 1/4 inch from that top raw edge of the main back panel. Again, just make sure that you find the center. Okay, and then we're going to take the hang loop, that's the piece we made in the first video, and I'm just going to tuck that in underneath this folded edge of the strap reinforcement strip, and I'm going to make sure that that is the same distance away on each side. That measurement's in the pattern. It's 3/4 inch. And I just want to make sure that this is tucked down by about the same amount, the 3/4 inch. Just as long as you do it both distances on the same, on each side, you'll be okay. Okay, so now those are pinned in place, and then I'm going to grab our strap, and so this would be like the wrong side. So you can see you can't see this strap slider, and this would be the right side. So I'm going to make sure that the wrong side is facing up, and I'm going to tuck these in as well. I'm going to use a little bit of an angle. Again, I don't use like a ruler or anything, just make sure that they're at an angle at the same approximate angle. So again, this is the wrong side of the strap, and I'm just going to tuck it down. They're both going to meet at that center mark. So that's what the back looks like. So then when you bring the strap down, it's going to connect to that triangle ring, and that's going to have the slider available for you to adjust it. Okay, so then we're going to take it over to the machine. We're going to top stitch this in place along the entire perimeter of the strap reinforcement strip. And I like to add an additional row of top stitching a 1/4 inch below the original here, just for reinforcing all these stress points, the hang loop and the straps. So all along the perimeter, and then again across the top edge. All right, so now we have that strap reinforcement strip all top stitched into place. And then I'm going to bring the straps down like this and connect the swivel clasps. So that's what that'll look like. And then I like to just snug these straps up as high as they can go, just so when we're sewing the base, in the next step, we're not going to worry about getting those in the way too much. Okay, now we're ready to assemble the exterior of the bag. So I'm just got the tote here, and we're going to place our front and back main panels right sides together, and we're going to sew along each of these side seams, that short edge. Okay, so I've sewn those side seams, and then we're going to just kind of slit that aside, and we're going to mark our base. So we're going to mark that into 1/4s. So I'm going to fold it in half this way and mark, and then I'm going to fold it in half the long ways. So there are my 1/4 markings. You can just make them a little darker if you need to. So that's my base, and next I'm going to mark the bottom, so make sure that you're grabbing the edge without the top handle sticking out, and I'm going to mark the 1/4s of that. And since we have 2 side seams, those are our 1/4s for that, and then I'm just going to fold it in half, align those seams, and this is going to be the 1/4s for the front and back. Okay, so then we're going to pin the base to the main panels, and I like to just start at this center marking, and I'm going to make sure I pin on the main panel side. I like to keep the main panel facing up when I'm sewing this type of base. I'm just going to keep that in mind. I'm just going to keep going around and matching those 1/4 markings and pinning from the main panel side. I also like to kind of make sure I get a couple extra pins on this longer edge. And then I'm going to take it over to the machine and sew this seam. You could do this ahead of time where you clip into the main panel to let that bottom edge kind of expand open to match the base, or I like to do it while I'm actually sewing so that I can make any adjustments at the machine. Either way would work. You would just want to pin it extra after you clip this edge. Okay, so I like to start at just the center, a nice straight edge to get started. And again, this is my main panel, and then I've got the base underneath. So then I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to clip straight at a perpendicular angle to the main panel's raw edge there by about 3/8 of an inch, just about every 1/2 inch or so. And that's going to allow this main panel, the edge of that, to meet the edge of the base piece. So I just kind of like to flatten it out with my hands, and this is a little bit more forgiving if you're using a cotton canvas. If you're using wax canvas, it's going to be a little bit more of a struggle. I do have a separate video on that I will link, that's showing the same process but using wax canvas. The needle down function would really be helpful if your machine has that. And then just keep adjusting as you're going and making sure that the layers are smooth underneath, and go slow. So again, when I get to this next curved section, I'm going to do the same thing. Clip into that seam allowance. And then I just like to use my fingers to kind of get in there and make sure that those raw edges are aligned. You could pin it at this point too. Okay, here's what it looks like now with the base attached to the main panels. And I would recommend, if this is your first time sewing anything with like a curved edge, I would just go ahead and turn it right side out. Oops, lose all your pins. And just double check that you caught those seams and that everything looks okay. You can always go back in and re-sew some of that or reinforce your stitching. It just takes a little bit of practice and just really slow sewing. So everything looks good to me, and I am just going to go ahead with my pinking shears and trim that seam allowance. Okay, and then we're going to go ahead and turn this tote right side out. If you're using wax canvas, now would be a good time to get your hair dryer out, and then you can smooth out those creases and crease marks with your hair dryer. Just make sure it's on a low setting. So then I just kind of stick my fingers in and kind of roll out that seam just to make sure it's nice and even. Okay, so there's the exterior shell of my tote, and I'm just going to go through and show the same steps with the backpack, and I'm not going to talk through those. So if you want more of a talk through for your backpack, just skip back to the tote section, and that'll give you kind of the rundown of any extra tips that I had. Okay, so that wraps up part 2 of the sew along. You should have your exterior shell completed. Here's the backpack. It's just outside. And here is the tote. So that outer part is all set. And in part 3, the last part, we'll be going over creating the lining and inserting the zipper and doing that top binding, and then we're all set. I hope you'll join me then. Bye.